Hey everybody, welcome back. It's another episode of Jake Talks Star Wars, and today we are talking about another episode of Star Wars Rebels. Today is Season 1, Episode 6, Breaking Ranks, which is a really fun episode where we get to see Ezra engaging in some undercover mission for his Rebel cell. He is undercover in an Imperial Academy, which is pretty neat to see. We don't get to see Imperial Academies prior to this, at least that I can remember, at least in canon. Because, you hear about Luke wanting to go to the Imperial Academy, you hear about Han going to the Imperial Academy, you hear about all these different things. But this is, as far as I can remember, the first time we see one in action, at least in canon. So Ezra is undercover in this facility, in this school, to recover this item. Right, they want a decoder. They need to steal something out of Agent Callus's office. This decoder to further their ends, and it's a lot of fun. It's very interesting. The things that struck out to me almost immediately was the voice actors. Rebels has a great voice cast always, but then you get the same kind of voices that show up a lot if you. Again, if you're like me, you grew up in the 90s, watched animation in the 2000s, you recognize a lot of these voices over and over again. One of the characters is none other than Rufio. I don't know if you remember Rufio from Hook. Also did the voice for Zuko in Avatar: The Last Airbender. This, of course, the actor's name is, of course, Dante Bosco. Very distinct voice. You recognize him a mile away. But he is playing a character in this alongside Ezra as well. So that's interesting. That's fun. But what we see in the facility here, I love this story because we've got this story that's fairly straightforward of Ezra wanting to steal this item and wanting to put himself in a position where he can steal this item. So he has to pass these tests. He has to rise through the ranks of these cadets and pass these tests, and he really has to work against his own personal morality because he wants to help his fellow cadets. He wants to help his fellow cadets and help his team, but that's not what he should be doing, and he's not going to be rewarded for that. So he has to play the role of a more ruthless Imperial cadet a few times, which I think is interesting. But the other thing that I really love that they did was, as they're testing these cadets, they're watching them. You've got the two not drill sergeants, but the two officers who are conducting the training, and they're watching them. And it becomes really clear they're not just training them to be stormtroopers or to be AT-AT pilots or AT-AT drivers or TIE pilots someday. They're also testing them for other things. And they're noticing how well Ezra is doing. And one of them says, he's really impressive. The other one says, he's too impressive. We're going to have to make a call. So you realize that these Imperial Academies are not just about training up future stormtroopers and future TIE pilots. They're also about screening children for force sensitivity, to see who is force sensitive out there in the galaxy and scoop them up before they can get out on their own and maybe encounter someone else or do something on their own. So that's something that's pretty interesting. We are going to have like a B storyline in this episode as well with a Kyber shipment. And that is really, really neat because it's tying into, this is prior to Rogue One, right? Remember, this is season 1. So this is prior to Rogue One. This is prior to Rogue One's release, and we're already seeing references to Kyber shipments. Kyber, of course, are the crystals that Jedi use to power their lightsabers. And we know later that Kyber is also what powers the Death Star, the Death Star's super laser. So in our B storyline, we're noticing that Hera and Kannan and the gang are interacting and intercepting this Kyber shipment. And of course they end up blowing up the Kyber shipment. and it causes this huge, massive explosion in space, this massive kaboom. But again, it's that subtle tie-in to Rogue One coming up, and Rebels did a great job with that, kind of hyping not just The Force Awakens, because they had trouble, that's further out, but definitely hyping Rogue One, because their story kind of connected to Rogue One in a more neat way. So definitely a good job there. Definitely something really, really neat. And again, that whole Kyber B storyline was actually a reused storyline from the Clone Wars that never made it to air. They never finished the episode of Clone Wars. They had this idea for the Clone Wars, and they ended up integrating it into Star Wars Rebels instead, which again, I think is kind of neat. But it makes more sense for Rebels as well. And I love how, nobody knows what the Empire wants Kyber for. Hera says to Kannan, what the heck do they want Kyber for? And Kannan doesn't know. He's not an expert. He's a Jedi. He uses Kyber in his lightsaber, but he's not an expert. He says, I don't know, but nothing good. And that's the truth. Nothing good. So pretty interesting stuff in the B storyline. Back in the main storyline, you've got Ezra kind of still working through this deal of his where he is undercover, where he's going to steal these plans, or he's going to steal this decoder. And the Inquisitors show up again, right? And they are going to, he's there specifically to take children. He's not there for Ezra. He's there specifically to take children away who are force sensitive or potentially force sensitive. And they're going to be disappeared, right? They are going to disappear and nobody knows what's going to happen to them. So that's pretty scary stuff. That's pretty dark stuff for a kids show, for a Star Wars kids show. But it's the truth of what the Empire would be doing and was doing at the time in canon, in the storyline. So pretty scary stuff, pretty dark stuff, but pretty lore accurate and pretty accurate to the way that these kind of things go. So definitely worth checking out. It's a great episode. Uses some unused stuff from Clone Wars. It ties in really well to the upcoming Rogue One. Stands well on its own. It really does a great job of increasing the menace of the Inquisitors and increasing the menace of the Empire in general. So lots of fun there. So again, Season 1, Episode 6, Breaking Ranks. Another great episode of Star Wars Rebels. Definitely worth checking out. And those are just my thoughts. Those are just my meanderings. But let me know what you think. What did you think of Season 1, Episode 6 of Rebels? What do you think of Rebels in general? Let me know in the comments below. You can also follow me and let me know on Threads or on Instagram. Jake Talks Star Wars at both of those places. And let me know what you think there. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great day. Remember, take care of each other out there. And as usual, may the Force be with you. Bye-bye.